In a city where the scent of waka leaves and charcoal smoke hangs heavy in the morning air and prayers echo from countless storefront churches, one man's desperate ambition would unearth a horror that stained the very ground he called holy. Hello my dear friends, and welcome once again to Afro Folktales. This is the home of inspiring life stories. Stories that teach, warn, heal, and guide us in the journey of life, love, family, and relationships. If you are new here, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world to me and helps us reach even more people who need these lessons of life. The city of Kumasi was a symphony of organized chaos. Trot-ros blared their horns, market women haggled with fiery passion, and the rhythm of high-life music spilled from every corner. Yet, nestled down a dusty, untarred lane in the bustling suburb of Bantama, the Chapel of Unending Grace was an island of unsettling silence. The congregation was small, a handful of elderly women and a few young men who seemed more interested in the shade the building provided than the sermon being preached. The plastic chairs were mismatched, the paint on the walls was peeling, and the offering bowl often held more good intentions than actual sadies. At the head of this struggling flock stood Prophet Mensah. He was a man in his late 40s, with a presence that seemed too large for the small room. He had a booming voice that could command attention and a smile that could charm the birds from the trees. But behind his charismatic eyes, a storm of envy and frustration was brewing. Every Sunday, he would hear the thunderous choirs and see the overflowing crowds of the megachurches just a few streets away. He saw their founders driving luxury cars, their faces plastered on giant billboards, their names whispered with reverence. He craved that success, that power, that respect. He felt his own calling was just as valid, his prayers just as fervent. So why was God ignoring him? His wife, Araba, a quiet, God-fearing woman, would often try to console him. "Kofi, be patient," she would say, her hands gently rubbing his tense shoulders. "The Lord's time is the best. He sees your heart." But Prophet Mensah's patience had worn thin. His heart, once filled with faith, was now consumed by a gnawing hunger for more. He began to believe that faith alone was not enough. He needed something extra, a catalyst, a shortcut to the divine favor he so desperately desired. It was this dark and dangerous thought that led him down a path from which there would be no return. His search for a solution led him to the shadowy corners of the city, to places whispered about but rarely visited. He sought out an old fetish priest, a man known only as Old Man Tedder, who lived in a secluded compound on the outskirts of the city. Tedder was ancient, his skin like wrinkled leather and his eyes holding the wisdom and weariness of 100 years. He listened patiently as Prophet Mensah poured out his frustrations, his voice a mixture of ambition and despair. He spoke of his empty pews, his meager offerings, and his burning desire to be a giant of God. Old Man Tedder let out a slow, dry chuckle that sounded like rustling leaves. He told Mensah that the spiritual world demanded reciprocity. To gain great power, a great sacrifice was necessary. He spoke of ancient rituals, of binding spirits to a location to draw in fortune, influence, and crowds. The price, he explained, was blood. A sacrifice that would anchor a powerful, thirsty spirit to the church, a spirit that would, in turn, compel people to come, to give, to worship. Mensah's blood ran cold, but the allure of success was a siren song he could not resist. He asked what kind of sacrifice was needed. The old priest's reply was chilling and direct. "The spirit will need a constant companion," he rasped. "A life, buried in the foundation, under the altar where you preach. A life, pure and vibrant, to feed its power." Prophet Mensah returned to his small home, his mind a whirlwind of conflict. The fetish priest's words echoed in his ears, a dark promise of greatness. He wrestled with his conscience for days. The man of God in him screamed sacrilege, murder, and unforgivable sin. But the ambitious man, the one who dreamed of packed auditoriums and overflowing offering baskets, whispered that the ends would justify the means. He convinced himself that a bigger church would mean more souls saved, more lives touched. He told himself this was a necessary evil for a greater good. The lie was a bitter pill, but he swallowed it. His target soon became clear. Emmanuel, a young, bright-eyed boy of about 10 who lived down the lane. Emmanuel was an orphan, living with an elderly aunt who could barely care for herself. He was a sweet, innocent soul who often hung around the chapel, drawn by the music and Prophet Mensah's charismatic smile. The boy saw the pastor as a father figure, helping to stack chairs after service and listening with rapt attention to his Bible stories. Mensah had always been kind to him, often giving him a few sadies for a snack. It was this trust, this innocence, that made him the perfect, tragic choice. One moonless Tuesday night, the city of Kamasi was asleep. Under the cloak of darkness, Prophet Mensa put his horrifying plan into action. He lured Emmanuel to the church on the pretext of needing help to move some new speakers he claimed to have bought. The boy, eager to please his hero, followed without a second thought. Inside the dimly lit chapel, what happened next was a brutal betrayal of innocence. The sounds were muffled by the thick walls of the church and the distant hum of the city. That night, a part of Prophet Mensa died, and something ancient and malevolent was invited in. He worked through the night, his hands trembling but his resolve firm. He dug a shallow grave right in front of the pulpit, the very spot where he would stand to proclaim the word of God. He placed the small, lifeless body inside, wrapped in a simple white cloth. As he shoveled the dirt back, mixing it with wet cement to create a new, smooth surface for the altar, tears streamed down his face. They were not tears of remorse, but tears of a twisted, desperate hope. He had made his sacrifice. He had buried Emmanuel under the altar to grow his church. The change was almost immediate. The very next Sunday, the chapel of unending grace was different. People who had never even noticed the small church before found themselves inexplicably drawn to it. The congregation doubled, then tripled. Within a month, the plastic chairs were not enough, and people stood packed against the walls and spilled out into the dusty lane. Prophet Mensa's sermons became electric. He preached with a new, captivating fire, his words seeming to hold a hypnotic power over the crowd. Miracles, or what seemed like them, began to happen. A woman who had been barren for 10 years conceived. A man who walked with a limp threw away his crutch. Businesses of the congregants began to flourish. The offering baskets were no longer filled with coins but with bundles of crisp Sadie notes. Prophet Mensa became the talk of the town. He was the new sensation, the man with the special anointing. He soon bought a bigger building, then another. He started a television ministry, his face now the one on the giant billboards he once envied. He drove the luxury cars, wore the expensive suits, and built a mansion. He had everything he had ever wanted. But the price was steep. While his days were filled with praise and adoration, his nights became a living hell. As soon as darkness fell and the quiet of his opulent mansion settled in, the haunting would begin. He would hear the faint, unmistakable sound of a child's laughter echoing through the empty halls. Sometimes, it was the sound of weeping, a soft, heartbroken sob that seemed to come from the walls themselves. He would see fleeting shadows in his peripheral vision, the shape of a small boy darting just out of sight. The ghost of Emmanuel never appeared in a terrifying form. It was his innocence that was the true horror. The boy would appear in Mensa's dreams, not as a monster, but as he was in life, smiling, trusting, asking, "Prophet, why?" Mensa would wake up in a cold sweat, the question hanging in the air. His wife, Araba, noticed the change in him. He became jumpy, irritable, and hollow-eyed from lack of sleep. He started drinking heavily, trying to drown the whispers and numb the guilt. She knew something was terribly wrong, but she could never have imagined the depths of his sin. One evening, during a televised crusade held in a massive stadium, as Prophet Mensa stood before thousands, his voice booming with authority, it happened. In the middle of a prayer, his eyes locked onto a figure in the front row. It was Emmanuel. The boy was sitting there, dressed in the same clothes he wore on that fateful night, his eyes wide and sad. He wasn't crying or screaming. He was just watching. Mensa froze. The words caught in his throat. The crowd murmured, confused by their prophet's sudden silence. He began to sweat profusely, his vision blurring. He could hear the boy's voice in his head, clear as day, over the thousands of people. "Is this what you wanted, Prophet? Are all these people worth it?" Prophet Mensa let out a gut-wrenching scream and collapsed on the stage. The stadium erupted in chaos. He was rushed away, but his mind was already gone. In the days that followed, he descended into complete madness. He would babble incoherently about a boy under the altar, about blood on his hands, about a debt that must be paid. His confession, though fragmented and delivered through the ravings of a broken mind, was enough. His wife, Araba, pieced together the horrifying truth, and in a moment of sheer agony and righteousness, she went to the police. The investigation led them to the original chapel of unending grace, now a forgotten storeroom for the megachurch. They broke through the concrete altar, and there, they found the small skeleton of a child. The city of Kamasi was rocked by the scandal. The man they had revered as a giant of God was revealed to be a monster. His empire crumbled as quickly as it had been built. The crowds that once flocked to him now cursed his name. Prophet Mensa was confined to a psychiatric hospital, his days spent screaming at the ghost of a smiling boy only he could see. This story, my dear friends, is a chilling warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the pursuit of success at any cost. It teaches us that there are no shortcuts to true blessings. The foundations of anything worthwhile must be built on integrity, patience, and righteousness, not on deceit and the blood of the innocent. The things we gain through dark and unholy means will always come with a price, a spiritual debt that will eventually claim our peace, our sanity, and our very souls. Thank you for joining me on this journey today at Afro Folktales. I hope this story has served as a powerful lesson. Remember to hold on to what is good and true, and never let the desire for worldly things lead you down a path of darkness. Until we meet again for another story, stay blessed, stay guided, and walk in the light.